Morning, everyone. Welcome to Thursday, March 13th, Advanced Plans meeting. Going to start off with roll call. Joe Johnson.
Here.
Cindy Miles.
Here.
John McKay.
Here.
Chuck Warren.
Here.
Hugh Nix is absent, and Brian Fry is absent. Next item is item number 2, the summary approval for the minutes for January 9th, 2005.
Move for approval. Second.
We have a motion for approved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All of,
Press my button. It's okay.
Yeah, we haven't noted Commissioner McKay motioned.
all opposed, same sign. The motion passed. Next item on the agenda is the meeting summary minutes for February the 13th, 2005. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
We have motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay, next item, item number 4, was the Wichita the Downtown Wichita Action Plan. Our guest speaker is Heather Schroeder. Ms. Schroeder, you are on.
Great. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Heather Schroeder. I'm Executive Director of Downtown Wichita, a position I've held for the past 7 months. So I'm somewhat well versed in Wichita in this brief time period. So this does not click ahead, right? So we can keep it rolling, Justin. Thank you. Let's see here.
Heather, you'll just have to say verbally next slide, and the
Yep.
folks in the booth will do it.
Yep, no worries. So just a note on who we are and what we do. So Downtown Wichita is a 501c3 non-for-profit organization located at 505 East Douglas Ave, and our primary responsibilities are helping with development of downtown. So that includes both business and real estate development. Marketing the district, so making sure that we're getting the good word out about the wonderful activities and promotions that are happening within our district, both those that we plan and that are planned by others, and enhancing vibrancy. And that's my favorite category because it's the most nebulous. It's our catch-all for placemaking and public space improvements and activation. You can go next slide. So the area that we are responsible for is defined in this map. So we extend from the Arkansas River down to Kellogg, over to Washington Street, and all the way up to Central. You'll notice a map I show later in the presentation has wider boundaries, but this is where we draw our funding from. So every property owner within this boundary pays a special assessment that helps to fund our day-to-day operations. Next slide. So you may notice some familiar faces in this look back to 2010 when we did our last downtown master plan, dubbed Project Downtown. You can see a young Scott Wadle, I think, at the bottom there with the Post-it note. And this was our first real attempt in the community at defining a vision for downtown Wichita over a prolonged period of time. So we worked with the planning firm Gensler back in 2010. We're thrilled with the impact that the community vision had over the ensuing 15 years. Next slide. To give you some examples of, some of the visioning at that time, here was a 2010 picture of how Union Station looked then. Of course, it has been redeveloped since then, not quite in the way imagined in this envisioned photo on the bottom of the screen. One thing that was not realized was development of a surface parking lot across the street. So that's still something that's on the table. Next slide, please. All of our surface parking downtown are future development opportunities. So again, a look back at a snapshot of 2010. So at the time that the plan was being created, these are the developments that were underway. So you can see there was There were about 21 projects under construction. 21 projects had been recently completed. 13 were under construction and 2 were in the planning stages. Next slide. If we fast forward to what's been accomplished downtown since that plan was adopted, you can see that we've completed 110 plans since 2010, or 110 projects, excuse me, with 9 additional under construction and 8 more in the pipeline. Overall, if you go to the next slide, we've seen a collective impact catalyzed by that 2010 plan of $1.7 billion of completed investment in our core. With the additional pipeline, you can see that we're poised to exceed that $2 billion number within the next 2 years. So really exciting statistics. I think the data speaks for itself, that it's worthwhile to do these visioning plans that help the community get on the same page and set a course for what we want development to look like in our core. Next slide, please. I also wanted to share with you some of the breakdown of our current construction tallies. So what type of investment are we having in our core? You can see a significant amount of that is attributable to the new biomedical center that has our 190-foot crane towering above downtown right now, but also residential and hospitality. Residential has really accounted for a lot of our growth. And if you go to the next slide, we can kind of break that out in a little bit more detail for you. We're going to talk about culture for a second. So some projects that are coming down the pike. The Kansas African American Museum just put out a press release last week saying that they did meet their $6 million fundraising goal. So they will be converting the old Sunflower Bank building that Joe's firm, Schaefer Architecture, designed 50 years ago. Now Schaefer has also been tasked with the redesign and redevelopment of that structure for cultural use. So we're really excited to see TCAM come into downtown. They're currently beyond our northern border at their Murdoch Street location. Next slide, please. And next up, Market Center. So this is a low-income housing tax credit. You can keep it out here, that's okay. Market Center is a low-income housing tax credit development that'll bring more affordable housing options into our core. As a past developer of affordable housing, I understand the value of having kind of all different price points within your downtown district, so that our day-to-day staff downtown have a variety of choices for where they live. The Orpheum, of course, completed their $9 million fundraising campaign, and in June of this year, they will shut down all of their shows. So if there's something that you want to see, go in there in the next few months, because they will be under construction, redoing all of their seating and their auditorium. The plans are extensive and transformational for this historic asset that dates to 1920. And next slide. So Biomedical Center, you've all heard about, again, that $300 million single site investment, but it's all part of a grander vision for a biomedical corridor. So basically the Biomedical Center is somewhat of a southern anchor for that, but the district extends all the way north to Ascension Via Christi. So you have about 10 blocks that this district encompasses that are already receiving a lot of attention from the real estate community in terms of, well, if I were to locate, my Center for the Aging along this district, would that be a complementary use? You can see that Heart Spring, which provides outpatient services for neurodiverse teenagers, or youth, is already committed to moving onto the same block as Biomed, as well as the county's ComCare facility. So in addition to those commitments, we have other interest already percolating. On the next slide, you'll see 9 different properties just within a 2 to 3 block area of Biomed that are also under development. So this particular investment has catalyzed not just the biomedical corridor, but also hospitality, residential, and additional healthcare uses, all in the same district. Next slide, please. One of those projects is the Arnold. This is at 333 English Street, and this will be 42 units of market rate housing, really small scale. So I think the developers realized here that a lot of their attraction will be for either students or people who are working at the biomedical center right across the street. That downtown will be their playground. They don't need a lot of private personal living space. There's also zero parking associated with this development. I so appreciate that our forward-looking zoning code dictates that there is no minimum parking requirement in the central business district, which enables us to redevelop properties like this into a use that's in such demand right now. Next slide, please. Another example of a project that's getting underway is the EPC development around Equity Bank Ballpark. This will bring 158 new hotel units with a hotel brand we don't yet have represented downtown. The Unscripted Hotels by Dream Hospitality Group. And also, let's see, I'm trying to remember the moving target on apartment units. I think in excess of 150 apartment units as well, in addition to a new garage and plenty of amenity space. There will be 10,000 square feet of retail on the ground floor of this development as well, facing the river. So that'll be really nice. And they have preserved the view shed from the ballpark to the river. So if you're at the game, you'll still be able to see the river from the seats. Next slide, please. And parking and wayfinding, things that are always underway. I'm sure you heard a thing or two about the city's new parking management plan that was passed in December of last year. That's set to take effect in June of this year for soft rollout and July for the whole shebang. We're excited to have parking management that'll reduce the number of complaints I have from shopkeepers who say the resident upstairs parks here all day and my customers can't get to my front door. We have to share these precious resources that we have in our tight downtown environment. Also wayfinding. I serve on our wayfinding committee for the city of Wichita. You can see that our signage is much loved. It's been around for a few decades and it's time for an update. So those plans are underway as we speak. Next slide, please. And I know that we're tight on time here, so we're just going to rapid fire through the next few so I can talk to you about our Downtown Wichita Action Plan. This is a process that we kicked off in September by releasing a request for proposals. We got 17 proposals from firms located all across the country. Through a selection committee, we chose 4 to come in for interviews, and then it was a unanimous choice of Sasaki. We can go to the next slide and keep going from there. And this is our recognition that after 15 years and $1.7 billion of development, it's time for an updated plan. So we're not throwing away the 2010 plan, we're building upon that. And we're calling it an action plan because this is not a pretty coffee table book. This is something that will have developer toolkits in it, frameworks for changes that we can make on a policy level to help us grow downtown Wichita for the next decade. So this is the composition of our team. You can see it's not just Sasaki, it's a bunch of experts from different subject areas. We had Jeff Speck in town last week to talk about urban walkability best practices. We have Derek Hutmer, who is a Wichita native, who brings his expertise in landscape architecture from MCLV out of Kansas City. And we have Ideas in Action, which is a real estate finance and consulting group out of New York City, and Public Sphere Projects out of Chicago, which helps with place branding and identity. So helping us get to the core of what makes Wichita, Wichita. Next slide, please. Goals of this program, again, building on, leveraging those past successes, recognizing that, that was guided by the previous plan, but we have more work to do. Elevating design and construction. This is where we really have some opportunities for changes on a policy level of what urban design standards do we have for what districts in our city, and how do those affect the style of design and the materials that we're using within our showcase district, our urban core. Our collaborative engagement, again, with the kickoff open house that we had last week, we had 300 people come out for that on a Tuesday night. That was the first of several open houses we'll have, so we hope to engage additional people through those events throughout the spring. And continued cultivation of what makes Wichita unique. Enhancing economic vitality. So what are the public and private contributions required? Where are we strategically locating our structured parking, for example? Where are we incentivizing certain types of development that otherwise could not happen in our core? We can go to the next slide. So I mentioned that our area of examination for this plan extends well beyond the SMID boundary. Recognizing that downtown doesn't happen in a vacuum, we've extended all the way up to Murdoch Street to the north and to Seneca on the west. This does encompass the Delano district, and I realize Delano is independent. They are not officially part of downtown, but we love our neighbors to the west, and we want to make sure we're making those connections. Because the map does not show connections south of Kellogg and east of Washington does not mean that those adjacent neighborhoods are not part of the discussion. It's just that a lot of the development that we've seen happening is putting pressures on our northern and western boundaries, and we wanted to focus our priority there. Next slide, please. And we can kind of rapidly go through these. So these were some of the boards that our team shared at our public meeting last week. What they've done is they've done their homework. So you may have noticed on the timeline, the project kicked off in January, and we waited until March to have our public feedback session because we wanted to show off the homework that the team's been doing. One of the reasons we chose Sasaki is because they use a data-based approach in their downtown planning process. So they started by comparing us to our peers and saying, how do we compare with other large cities in the region? Kansas City, Oklahoma City, and Tulsa. You can see, for example, we punch above our weight when it comes to access to parks compared to some of our peer and larger cities in the region. We're about on the level with the amount of housing that we provide, but we're a little behind the curve in terms of the number of jobs we have in our core. That becomes an issue when you look at our land use. If you go to the next slide. Oh, we've got some history here. We'll keep going. You all know our history. Okay, so looking at land use, you can see we have a predominant office environment downtown. That's that light blue at the top. But again, we don't have the big concentration of jobs that perhaps we once had a few decades ago in downtown. So looking at, how are we currently allocating our built environment, and how do we need to reallocate that to meet the needs of a forward-looking downtown? For example, there is strong demand for housing right now. Also of note in this slide is the concentration of these activities. Well, this categorization can account for mixed-use development. You see that sea of yellow and on that northwestern side. That's an old style of development where we built garden-style housing only. And those residents have to have parking. They have to have cars so they can get in their car and drive to a grocery store. We're getting away from that into more mixed-use development so that everything a resident needs is within easy walking distance. We'll go to the next slide, please. Parcel utilization. The reason that I love this slide is because it shows that downtown is hemorrhaging. All that red is parking. So you can see that more than 50% of our land mass in our highest value real estate in the city of Wichita, in the core of Sedgwick County, is allocated for parking. So when people say there isn't enough parking, I would beg to differ. But how we place that parking, how we locate it, how we direct people to it and sign it is all part of the challenge and part of what we're looking at with this plan. Next slide, please. Publicly owned parcels. These are opportunities where we can have a direct impact through city and county owned land. You can see that, again, a portion of that is dedicated to surface parking, but look at the open space we have available. Again, we have a great opportunity to provide connections between our open space as an amenity for quality of life here. Next slide, please. This slide is of particular interest because it shows the density opportunity. So on the left is the reality, on the right is what our zoning code allows in terms of massing. So you can see we have a lot more opportunity to build up rather than out. As cities like Wichita try to combat urban sprawl and offer more in the core, we have an existing opportunity to do that within our zoning code. Next slide, please. Buildings by age, I think this is of interest because you can see that those dark colors concentrated in some of our most popular parts of downtown in Delano, like Old Town, and of course the original, West Douglas core of Delano. And then you see urban renewal in all those light colors with the mega blocks that make up a lot of our government services area. Next slide, please. And we can just scroll through these. Next. These are examples of the building stock that we have here, both privately and publicly owned. And, I think it's important to look at the context of what materials have been popular and successful in our urban design, what styles provide the context for new development. And also, if you can go to the next slide, as we look to new buildings, again, all of those surface parking lots are future development opportunities. How are we developing them? I took these pictures on a trip for the International Downtown Association in Seattle last fall. These are public buildings in the city of Seattle. On the left is their public library. On the right is the Museum of Pop Culture. Just an example of how to elevate the importance of our cultural assets through the design that we afford them. Next slide, please. Amenities, again, what mix of retail and personal services and restaurants are currently available in our core, and where might we want to build upon those concentrations? And also notice where we have amenity deserts, places where you can't get a soda during the workday or a sandwich easily at lunch. Next slide. Housing, again, we can see that garden-style apartment is kind of the predominant model throughout downtown. We do have some mid-rise and a handful of townhouses. We've done a market research study as part of this process that actually indicated we have considerable demand for more home ownership options in downtown. We have a handful of multifamily condominium developments, but we have no townhouses that are available for purchase, unlike some of our peer cities in the Midwest. Next slide, please. Again, looking at our housing mix, you can see we're currently just shy of 3,000 units. In order to get a grocery store, we need a minimum of 5,000. So I live downtown, when my fellow residents complain that we don't have a grocery store, I say, bring me more neighbors and introduce me to the developers who have property to redevelop, because we need more housing. Next slide. With the landscape ecosystem, this is really recognizing that we have a lot of great, as I mentioned before, parkland, public systems, opportunities to connect these green spaces, not only through but beyond the downtown district. Next slide. Transit, of course, this is top of mind for everyone in this room. We're currently, at Wichita Transit revising the proposed route plan. The proposal is to eliminate the circulator route on Douglas that currently is known as the Q line, that will have repercussions for our visitor services as well as our business recruitment. Next slide. Bike infrastructure. I know we have some cyclists in the room. We've done a great job of beginning to build out our connected bike system. Where are there additional opportunities to do that? With the conversion of several of our downtown streets from one-way to two-way, we may have additional opportunities to provide those safe connections for cycling. Next slide, please. And if we compare this current view of our downtown streetscape with the following slide, we'll see that we have, again, plenty of opportunity to change our existing landscape to better meet the needs of a more modern city. So here we have surface parking lots flanking both sides. If we go to the next slide, you'll see how the built environment changes when we insert a bike lane, in the street, and when we have, greater foliage on our streetscape to provide that comfortable walking and cycling environment, when we have buildings that close it in so that it feels more comfortable to walk down the street and doesn't feel so vacant. Next slide. So when our visitors were in town last week, we did a walk audit of our downtown, taking in, suggestions from the professionals of where there were areas for improvement. We'll be incorporating all of that into their work. Next slide, please. And you can go to the following slide to see a glimpse into some of the activities that we did at our open house last week. Again, engaging with 300 community members through activities, through these boards that asked for direct feedback. We've put this into an online poll as well. So if you missed the opportunity to participate with the boards, we can share that link with you to send out to your communities. And I think with that, we're about at the end. So I really appreciate your time today. If there's any follow-up information that I can provide about the Downtown Wichita Action Plan and our planning process, I'm more than happy to do so. As you can see here, this is a quick process. We're expected to wrap up in the next 6 months. So we're really eager to get this product done, make sure that we have our plans in order. And that's why community engagement is paramount at this time. If you have not yet engaged in this process, please see me, please reach out because we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to give your input before the next round of visits from our experts, which will be our design charrette. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Heather. I appreciate your presentation. And also there was an email that Scott sent out to give everybody an opportunity to look at some of the feedback and stuff that they were getting from some of the individuals that attended the various event things. So, any questions from anybody from the commission?
I guess my only question would be, I hadn't heard anything about any of these engagements, and I'm pretty involved in the community, so I don't know how I get on a list so I can actually hear and or share in the newsletters that I send out for other community members.
Sure. So downtownwichita.org is our website, and we have if you go to downtownwichita.org/action plan, that's where we have a sign up for our email distribution list to stay apprised of engagement opportunities. You can also email me, and I'll make sure that you're added to the list. My email's on the screen right now, heather@downtownwichita.org. Please subscribe to the Downtown Wichita social media channels on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We've partnered with various community organizations to get the word out as well. So if you're not hearing about it, I would love to know what other organizations we need to partner with. Thank you.
Scott, did you have anything you wanted to add or any comments?
I would just, the video that I sent out was the one that Jeff Speck had put together. So just so everyone knows, it gives his thoughts and ideas related to downtown walkability and future possible changes.
Okay. Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the presentation.
Appreciate it.
The next item on the agenda would, item number 5, parking and the unified zoning codes updates. Mr. Justin.
Good morning, Chair Aldrich and committee members. Justin Constantino with the Planning Department. Just a quick update on parking and unified zoning codes. So as you all know, we're currently undergoing a process to align our parking requirements and community goals. The effort will focus on a potential update to the unified zoning code and comprehensive plan. Back in April of 2024, we solicited proposals from qualified companies to provide professional services to assist with this process. On November 25th, 2024, the city entered into an agreement with Camiros, based out of Chicago. They are the consulting firm that will be assisting with this project. The project kickoff meeting between the city and Camiros occurred on Monday, January 13th. Staff and representatives from Camiros discussed the project timeline, branding, and the formation of a steering committee and technical advisory committee. Staff has since provided Camiros with GIS data and relevant zoning and variance case history pertaining to parking. About 5 years worth of data was provided to Camiros. And then Camiros has since provided draft project logos and project website text. Staff anticipates continued discussion with Camiros in the coming weeks, specifically with an emphasis on the formation of the steering and technical advisory committees. Once we have those committees formed, the process will certainly continue. That's my brief update with that, and I'm available for any questions.
Are there any questions for Justin? Seeing none, thank you, sir. That takes us into the comprehensive plan update. Mr. Justin?
Sure. Just happy to provide an update on the comprehensive plan. Back in October of 2024, we released a request for proposals for qualified consultants to provide professional services to review and produce amendments to the existing community investments plan, which is a 20-year plan, 2015 through 2035. The document requested potential changes to the locational guidelines of the existing plan, the 2035 future growth concept map, and the 2035 urban growth areas. The city has finalized an agreement with PEC, Professional Engineering Consultants, back in December of 2024. We have since met with PEC in a pre-kickoff meeting, and we have discussed data sharing, project timeline, branding, and again, the formation of steering and technical committees. So very similar to the previous item on parking, once we get those steering and technical committees formed, the project will formally commence, and we will have further updates for you on that one.
And thank you, sir. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you. We will move to agenda item number 7, College Hill Neighborhood Plan. Justin?
So as you are all aware, the planning staff is working with College Hill stakeholders to develop a neighborhood plan for the College Hill neighborhood. This would serve as a guide for future policies, programs, and infrastructure. We're working with a consultant and a 15-member steering committee that was appointed by the City Council back in November of 23. The project team has since hosted a community kickoff meeting with individual focus group meetings with businesses, schools, churches, and nonprofits. The good news is that we expect to receive a final draft of the College Hill neighborhood plan from the consultant, RDG, this week. So we will likely be hosting a steering committee meeting during the week of March 24th to review that draft neighborhood plan. On a really positive note as well, the public open house to review that draft neighborhood plan is scheduled for Thursday, April 3rd from 4:30 to 7 o'clock p.m. at Grace Presbyterian Church. That's 5002 East Douglas Avenue. This meeting will allow stakeholders to review the draft College Hill neighborhood plan and provide any input regarding a protective overlay for the neighborhood. For more information on this plan, I encourage residents, stakeholders, individuals watching this meeting to visit wichita.gov/College Hill. We will continue to provide updates regarding the status of the plan. But again, April 3rd, Thursday, 4:30 to 7 o'clock p.m. at Grace Presbyterian Church for the public open house for the plan. And I'm available for any questions.
Justin, can you send out an email to all the commissioners with that information as far as the April 3rd date, time, location, for if any of the commissioners would like to attend that?
Certainly, we'll send that out to the Planning Commission. We also have a constant contact for individuals that have been interested in this plan from the get-go. We'll be sure to send that out as well. We'll be getting the word out over the next couple weeks with postcards, yard signs, all that good stuff. So we'll certainly be sending an email to the planning commissioners as well.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you so much for the updates. Any questions for Justin? Seeing none. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That brings us to agenda item number 8, the MAPD updates. Scott Wadle.
Sure. I'll go through this one pretty quick because we're early on in the year and you just got some pretty robust updates from Justin here. So you've got the handout here. On page 2 is where we're going through our graphs. Just know that we're on pace to have I'd say about the same number of cases as we had last year, thereabouts, maybe a little bit higher. So we'll see how it goes. On page 3, this is the non-subdivision items at the Planning Commission. We started out the year really with a high caseload, and that was getting a little worrisome for staff because 2024 ended with the same very high level of cases. And then as we've gone into 2025, it's kind of leveled out a little bit with some ups and downs, which has been good because it's given folks a chance to recover. So we're just kind of steady Eddie so far on those. Page 4 is subdivision items. We've seen ups and downs on page 5. You can see the ups and downs in the blue line that's at the top. What I believe we're missing is actually some more recent ones that have come in that have actually been above our staff capacity there. But all in all, it's been pretty good for us, fairly steady. The number of lots is still high. So this year we've seen a number of subdivisions that have come in with a lot of lots, like over 100 lots. So we're still seeing a lot of residential development, at least in the early stages with us. On page 6, we're talking about staffing. So for advanced plans, we still have one position that is frozen. For zoning enforcement, we have one position that is currently being flown, and that's a part-time position. It's flying internally, so we're hoping to get that staffed up. That's for the short-term rentals. And then in current plans, we have one vacant position that we're doing a second round of interviews for. So we're real excited about that. Going to bring the individual in so they can see the department and meet people. On page 7, we've got our little bit of information about public contacts. We're starting to provide you information on websites. Our February numbers, so we only have January and February numbers. Our February numbers were down quite a bit compared to January. So we'll see what happens with March. But what's interesting to me is if you look at the top pages that people were clicking on, most of the ones in February are really about looking up cases, looking up codes and regulations and where are the cases and what's happening. On page 8, on short-term rentals, the biggest update I can give you here for page 8 and page 9 is that we're seeing a lot of enforcement action because there were just simply some people who did not get them either zoned or get them licensed. So they are going to court. And so we've got a number of cases going there. And so JR is spending a lot of time going to court and testifying as needed on those. So number 10, solar energy conversion systems. The only thing that goes all the way through 12, I guess the thing that you could be aware of is that the city took action to formally request that the county consider modifying the zoning code to allow for large-scale solar projects to occur within the city of Wichita's urban growth area. This is being prompted by the solar group that's looking to do a project on that south side down by the old Volcom plant. So my understanding is that the county is considering that request, and we'll see where those conversations go. Public notifications in the city on page 13. We're working through that. I don't have any big updates for you on that one. Event centers in the county, that one's on hold until later on this summer. College Hill, you got an update on that one. Parking and zoning, you got an update on that one. And then daycares and zoning, what we need to do is schedule time to brief, to send an email to the council members to see if they'd like a briefing on it before we take that to the city council for consideration. So there's lots more going on. These are just some of the highlights from those. So any questions? I'll stand for any questions. Ready?
Scott, I actually got a quick question on these subdivision cases that we've heard that you're showing here. Can you show or break that down between how many subdivisions were city and how many subdivisions were in the county?
Certainly. We can certainly work on adding that. I'll work with Justin and Brian on our staff to add another graph on there. So you bet.
Thank you. Commissioner Warren?
Scott, the short-term rental cases that are going to court, are we seeing a pattern on how those cases come out? What's that looking like?
Excellent question, as always. I don't have that information offhand. I need to get with JR because you're the second person who's asked me about that, so I need to find out what the results are. Yep.
I just have a question about the short-term rentals also. The last, it seems like every time we have one that comes before us, we know there are going to be a bunch of people saying we don't want them. Is there any way, and I think I asked this question the last time, geographically say you take a quadrant, quarter part or whatever, and how many there are in each one of those units?
So I think that's a two-part. So there's one thing that we can do. We've got the system that will tell us where there are short-term rentals in the city. It doesn't capture 100%, but it gets pretty close. So we can look that up for you. And I believe we've started to look at including that in staff reports. Then the second thing that's come up is related to your question is whether or not there's any guidance in the comprehensive plan. Because if we get a case that comes to us that's been appealed or protested to the amount that an administrative permit's not approved, so we know it's coming to you as a conditional use, we have no guidance in the comprehensive plan to tell us whether or not we should be recommending approval or not on the case. So every case that you see is recommended for approval by staff. This has prompted the question about, well, what are other communities doing? How are they determining whether or not a short-term rental is, should be recommended for approval? We're not finding a lot right now, but we're continuing to do that research. But we're looking into it.
Anything else? Any other questions?
There's a question about the first presentation, and Joe, you might be able to answer this, because I was on the board and so was you when we first started this thing a number of years ago. And one of the big problems that we had was the park that they've torn down now and all this. Do you know, and I didn't want to open Pandora's box, about how this downtown revitalization plan is dealing with the homeless? I know we got a place up on North Main, but an owner that just sold his building because of the medical deal, I was probably glad that I got to sell it, because my staff would have to clean the porches. There's 2 entrances into it every day, practically, because they had moved from one place to the other. And on North Topeka, which is in this area, everybody that closed the Shirk Beer building because of it, they closed the corner, this building across the street. Your office is you're right in the middle of it, you know that. First Baptist Church is closed. I don't know what they call it now, and nothing can probably ruin a plan any quicker than thing is not knowing what the side effects are going to be, because who knows?
Thank you. Any other comments? Thank you, Scott. Also, Scott did have a couple of handouts that he passed out regarding House Bill 2088 and 2343. That would probably be some interesting reading on some of the legislation that's pending, if you will.
If I could, sir, I'll just a couple minutes go give you a brief overview. One of those concerns home occupation businesses, especially out in the county. And so as you review that, know that it would, if it is approved or if it becomes law, it could substantially change how home occupations are handled. So just on that one. The other one would establish a 60-day shot clock for cases. And I apologize. When I checked the legislature's website this morning, both of these bills, I got an error that the page could not be reached, and I tried multiple times. So I don't have the latest updates for you. But I wanted to pass these out to give you a heads up on just what's occurring. And if you're interested, you can probably do a Google search and find them later on today, hopefully. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions, any comments? Yep. I'm sorry, that's outside of my bailiwick. What? Yeah, it is, and you know, we'll just have to. We're probably going to have a full house later on, which Scott was pointing out that it's going to heat up a little bit due to body temperature and probably some of the comments. We got about 3 items that could be of interest, so I would recommend that we get here earlier for parking, because we got parking issues right now. So. If you can get them through security. I think we'd be better off just to have a couple of coolers here to help, more ways than one. Maybe not. Yeah. Well, I don't have any more public comments, and I don't see anybody. Kelly, do you have anything you want to throw in here? Or? No, sir, I'm good. Good, okay. If there's any additional business.
Why?
Okay.
Why?
Okay, I think there's a protest. I think there might be a protest petition circulating now.
Why? That's too bad. Yeah.
Our next meeting for advanced plans will be April the 10th, 10 a.m. So if anybody doesn't have anything else, I'd entertain a motion for dismissal. We're out of here. Thank you.
experience has been that the offices on the south side of the building where the windows are, they just heat up like solar panels. This side of the building, as the sun gradually moves that direction,
I mean, so much has already been said about the rate study. I don't know. I know Mosaic, we're at the end of it. You know, it's just very confusing. I know, what call was it a couple weeks ago? I'm sorry, there's so many phone calls with the that Interhab arranged on Friday that there were agencies that were doing parts of it that didn't need to be done on the group homes. There's just been so much confusion with it.
But they lengthened the time frame at least.
Yeah,
It
at
wasn't
least we
due
had
over
that.
Christmas
Yeah.
weekend or whatever that was.
Yeah,
that
well, when did we get the
craziness.
email on a Monday that we had a first meeting